introducing Dr. Soumendranath Kuri. He is from Environment and Water Resources Engineering Department of IIT, Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, and is placed at Chennai. So note that his research areas emphasizes like there is various areas are developing an integrated model for simulating floods due to combined effect of heavy rainfall in the land area and storm surge in the ocean. That is important because Chennai is situated in the coastal area. Yes, is a very good work. Means different type of work they are doing, and also he is developing local inertial model for simulating urban floods, conducting experiments in a river network floodplain setup to study urban floods, simulating sediment transport in rivers and estuaries. I think most of us or all are knowing this Chennai floods. So he is involved in that study of that Chennai floods, and his research areas include computational open channel flow, river flow, tidal wave propagation, dam break flow, coastal and estuarian flow. He is also involved in modeling of hurricane and tsunami wave propagation. And in addition to that, sediment transport in rivers and coasts and experimental study on dam break and river network flow. So some of the ongoing projects include storm surge impact in estuaries by Department of Science and Technology, and other one as urban modeling, development of multi-sectoral simulation lab and science-based decision support framework to address urban environmental issues. And now we'll be delivering on two topics. Morning is one session and evening is another session. I'm happy to welcome Dr. Kuri for these two sessions. Actually, we are thinking of inviting him to Pantnagar because that COVID has made to see him still virtually only. Because Dr. Jyoti Prasad, she had been to IIT Chennai for a week. During that time, she interacted with him very well, and yeah, that is our relation from the last so many years. So we welcome Dr. Kuri to present his work, and welcome, sir. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Professor Prasad. First of all, I would like to thank you and the entire organizing committee for giving me opportunity to share our work with so many participants. And I'm very delighted that now 77 participants are there. So I think it's a very good audience. And before I go into the topic, because yesterday I was interacting with Professor Jyoti, and she was telling that in this program we have some faculties from different colleges. At the same time, we have some research scholars. So what I will do is I will start from basic things, because as far as I know, many faculties, those who are participating in FDP program, they may not have direct knowledge in this area, but maybe they are preparing for next semester or they will be working in future. So some topics will be a little light, and some topics will be a little bit or heavily loaded, because some research scholars are there. They need some advanced topics. So I'll focus in that angle also. So please bear with me. Sometimes it may feel a little bit advanced, but all the slides I will share with you. In future, if you want to pursue research in this area, that time, of course, you will understand everything.
Sorry,
so the topic I have broken in three parts. In the
first slide presentation, there is a problem.
Yeah, I'll start.
Yeah, please. Yeah, fine now.
So I'm switching up my video,
Okay.
Sometimes bandwidth can create problem.
Yeah, you are right.
So the first topic, it will be like basic things. Just will build up our case. Then towards after 1 hour or so, I'll start a little bit advanced topic, what we are doing here. That will be mostly focusing on research and some application. And in the second half, I'll be trying to balance between both basic and application and some theoretical aspect. So the first topic is fundamentals of free surface flow modeling. I generally prefer to talk about this topic before I start this modeling or model application, because means quite often most of the people are using models, so they may not be the model developers. Therefore, I feel sometimes what I have observed in the classroom also, that we use the models, but we ignore some things. As a result, sometimes we are not able to explain why the model is not working, or sometimes why we can't improve accuracy beyond certain level, and why sometimes some models are failing in some particular cases. So we generally, what happens, we don't know the theoretical background of the model, and then we are not in a position to explain why these problems are cropping up. So this is why I will talk about these fundamentals, so that it will be in your mind before you apply any model. And if you come around such problem, you should have some idea how to tackle it. Okay, so as Professor Prasad introduced, I'm Dr. Somendranath Koiri from IIT Madras, Civil Engineering Department, and I'm working in the area of computational hydraulics as well as experimental hydraulics. And please remember that here we have different types of schemes for MS and PhD research. So every year there will be 2 times admission, one during summer and one during winter, and there will be advertisements in our website. And we have like 3 options. One is a direct PhD. That means after your BTech, you can directly enroll for PhD program. So in that case, there is option like it can be integrated both MS and PhD. Next is regular PhD. That means after your MTech degree, you can enroll for PhD. We also have this QIP program. Those who are already professional or working some AICTE approved colleges, they can come for pursuing PhD. And we have MS by research. That is a little bit different than regular MTech programs. Regular MTech programs is heavily loaded with coursework and one project, whereas in case of MS, we have some limited course, means you have to attend some courses, and then it will be mostly on research work. So with these brief details, I am starting the topic. So fundamentals of free surface flow modeling. Let us try to understand what is free surface flow. So if there is flow of something, we will focus on water. We change one free surface. That means the surface is open to the atmosphere, or in other words, the surface is subjected to atmospheric pressure. So free surface flow in general, it is gravity driven flow. Of course, there can be some other forces also, but most of the time free surface flow is driven by gravity.
Sir, slides are not moving. Oh yeah, fine.
Yeah. So now the brief outline of the topic. So I'll go for very basic thing. Why you should learn fluid mechanics. Then what is the history of fluid mechanics? Then what is the classification of fluid mechanics? Then what is computational fluid dynamics? That means solving fluid mechanics problem with the help of computer. And then I'll compare experiments versus simulations. Then what is the structure of CFD simulation system? Then I will try to explain it step by step, the procedure for computational hydrodynamics. Because in CFD is the term which is more suitable for mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering. I think in our case, in civil engineering or hydraulics, it can be computational hydrodynamics or just hydrodynamics. Then post-processing using GIS just to visualize and analyzing the results. So now, what is the motivation for studying fluid mechanics? If you go, I hope all of you have gone through fluid mechanics course in your BTech level, and some of you have gone through your advanced course during master degree. So fluid mechanics is omnipresent. That means this topic, this subject is available in aerodynamics, bioengineering, then in mechanical system like combustion, then in energy generation, then in geology, then of course hydraulics and hydrology, then meteorology, ocean and coastal engineering, water resources engineering, and numerous other examples. So in my talk, I will try to cover hydraulics, hydrology, meteorology, ocean and coastal engineering. So in case of river hydraulics, we focus on simulating flow. It may be in a river system or stream system, or it can be flow in open channel, any other channel. It can be even lab flume also. Then in case of meteorology, we can start it from atmospheric modeling, then we can go for rainfall modeling, then we can go for rainfall runoff modeling or hydrologic modeling, then we can go for hydraulic modeling, and then we can go for hydrodynamic modeling, that means ocean side. Of course, it can be tsunami, that also we can simulate. So now, out of this entire fluid mechanics in civil engineering, we deal with a liquid only, because fluid means liquid, gas and plasma. So we focus on liquid flow, and that too water. So fluid mechanics can broadly be classified in two groups, hydrodynamics and gas dynamics. Okay, let me give you the pointer. Yeah, so in hydrodynamics, it is like hydraulics and it is incompressible flow. In case of gas dynamics, it is aerodynamics, which can be incompressible or compressible flow. Now, out of that, we will focus on hydrodynamics. In hydrodynamics, one aspect is hydrostatics. That means when the fluid is not moving, and then we can discuss hydrodynamics for ideal fluids and real fluids. Of course, there is one more topic which is very important, that is boundary layer hydrodynamics. So we have fluid, out of fluid, we are talking about liquid. Then we can discuss about hydrostatics and hydrodynamics of ideal and real fluids. Boundary layer is important in civil engineering, but it is very, very important in aerospace and mechanical engineering. Now, when we talk about numerical modeling or modeling of any fluid flow, then what should be the approach? There are three approaches: experimental study, theoretical study, and then computational study. Experimental hydraulics, if you look at the early days, or I would say maybe before 80s, mostly we were relying on experimental hydraulics. Of course, theoretical study has been developing since long back, but there is huge development when computer came into in this area and many numerical schemes were developed, now we can solve fluid mechanics problems with the help of computational methods. So in earlier days, we used to prepare model, that means a replica of a prototype, and then we used to study, and whatever results we are getting from that dimensional and model analysis, we'll go back to the prototype system so that we can understand the prototype. But nowadays, for many situations, many fluid flow situations, we can use numerical models. It can be 3D, it can be 2D, it can be 1D. And it can be for different types of flow regimes, like for subcritical flow, it can be for supercritical flow, or it can be for transcritical flow. Transcritical means the flow can be mixed, subcritical, supercritical, both can be there. Now, if we want to focus on computational fluid dynamics, actually I'm trying to merge slowly with hydrodynamics. So I'll start from computational fluid dynamics, then I'll merge to hydrodynamics. So what are the basic concepts of computational fluid dynamics? So the CFD, it is a branch of fluid mechanics, and that is numerical methods and algorithms to solve some fluid related problems. So essentially what we do is we use numerical methods and algorithms to solve some fluid flow problems. So what we do is these methods, whatever numerical methods are there, we use computer to solve the numerical the fluid flow problems numerically. Now the term simulation is used to indicate that we use the computer to solve numerically the laws that govern the movement of fluids. So I hope all of you know the laws like conservation of mass, momentum, and energy. So all these equations we solve for simulating fluid flow problems. That means the whole system is transformed into a virtual environment. That means we conduct numerical experiments in a computer instead of in a physical setup. Now, what are the ideas behind numerical methods? So, when we talk about any physical process, whether it is flow in a channel, or it is a dam break flow, or it is tsunami wave propagation, whatever be it, every physical process follows some set of rules. Now, these rules may be defined by a set of mathematical equations. Now, these equations are generally differential equations, and most of the time these equations are highly nonlinear, so analytical or exact solutions may not be possible. This is why we use numerical methods to solve these equations approximately. Please remember this thing. When we use numerical methods, we solve the equations approximately. So rules are there. All the physical processes are following certain rules. We are defining the rules with the help of mathematical equations. Sorry. These equations are partial differential equations. Sorry. And the partial differential equations are solved with the help of numerical methods in a computer. Now, if that is the case, what should be the structure of a CFD simulation system? So we follow different steps, and these are common steps, whether it is civil engineering problem or mechanical engineering problem or aerospace engineering problem. If it is related to CFD, the steps are very similar. So step 1, for a given physical process, like let's say flood or flow in a river, we have to choose a suitable mathematical model. This model should describe the physical process. Okay. Now, when we try to define a physical process which is happening in reality, we have to approximate, because all the aspects of the physical process cannot be described by limited mathematics. So we assume something. That means we approximate the problem. Now, the level of approximation will define the complexity of the problem. Okay, so that is step one. Once your mathematical model is decided, that means you are coming up with some differential equations. Now, your computer cannot solve differential equations directly, because computer understands only numbers. This is why the next step, that means step 2, is discretization process. Now, discretization means we discretize something. That means we will explain everything like in a discrete system. Okay, so it has two components. When we talk about, let's say, flow, like river flow, that means there is a river bed and water is flowing. So at least one medium is there, that is a river bed. Now in reality, this river bed is a continuous surface. Now the computer will not understand it directly. So we try to define this bed or river topography by some points. That means the points should be described by X, Y, and Z. That means XY coordinate and what is the elevation with respect to data. Now, if we supply so many points so that the entire geometry can be defined, then it is called space discretization. So this space discretization, that means to represent the space with the help of some finite number of points, we call it grids. When we connect these points, they are not like arbitrary. Of course, the points will be connected with some sequence. Then we define a grid. Digital elevation model. This is like, this will represent a regular grid. Okay. So in the first step, we discretize the space. And in the second step, we discretize the equations, because they are partial differential equations. So we cannot solve them directly. So we take the help of numerical methods to transform the partial differential equations into difference equations. That means in the algebraic form of the equations. Now, once it is in algebraic form, that means your operations are very simple, like addition, subtraction, division. So computer can do it very easily. So we have space discretization, then we have discretization of the equations. That is the step 2. Now in the step 3, we should know about the numerical method. I'm describing it from two perspectives. One, if you are a model developer. Two, if you are a model user. If you are a developer, then you have to follow almost all the steps. If you are a model user, then maybe some of the steps you don't have to follow, because those who have developed the model, they have followed those steps, but you should know them. Now, why? Because some models are developed for some typical conditions. You cannot use those models for some other conditions. Now, the numerical scheme, there are a variety of numerical schemes. It can be simple numerical schemes, like some numerical schemes are there. They are very good when the flow is subcritical. Okay. Now, this numerical scheme cannot be applied to simulate one supercritical flow, because that requires special type of numerical scheme. So whenever you are using a model, you should read the assumptions, or what are the limitations, whether that particular type of problem can be solved by the chosen model or not. You should be aware of this thing. So You should analyze the numerical scheme, and you should know the stability criteria and what kind of accuracy you can get. That is the step 3. Now, in the step 4, we should use a time integration method. Of course, for available model, it is already there. But then again, I think sometimes you have to specify for some models whether you can go for like first order time integration or second order integration or even higher order integration. It depends on the type of problem. Sometimes first order is very good, but for some complex problems where the accuracy is very, very important, maybe you have to go for higher order time integration. So you have to choose accordingly. Once you get the results, then you can, say you are using the numerical model, you are getting the results, then in the step 5, we should go for graphic post-processing of the results. This we can do with the help of many graphical tools. Sometimes some models, they have inbuilt processor. That means you can process the results and visualize. Sometimes they may not be very effective. So you have to go for some standalone tools. But for civil engineering problems or in our area, GIS can be a very good option. Okay, these are the 4 steps. Just I would like to take a feedback. Professor Siva, everything is going fine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's fine.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now, so I was talking about different steps. Now, I'm trying to summarize it here. What should be the CFD structure? So, first step is we have a real world. That means there is a process, what you would like to solve. Then you are approximating the process so that you can describe it with the help of some mathematical equations. That will, yes. That will be like a mathematical model. That is the step 2. Now, this mathematical model will be this will be based on partial differential equation. So we will go for discretization phase. That will be done in 2 steps. Step 1, discretization of the space. That means grid generation. Then discretization of the model equation. That is based on numerical scheme. Now, once this step is done, then we can go for next step. That means you choose the method, you numerical scheme, and then there are some checks like consistency, stability, and accuracy. Then we can solve the resulting equation. Maybe in case of readily available model, these steps are already done. So you can come to post-processing and model verification. But when you are generating some results, you should be careful about the stability, model stability. Okay, I'll discuss it. So what I was telling is, with the help of mathematical model, you can do numerical experiments. You don't need physical experiments. Now, if we compare the simulations with respect to physical experiments, then how do they compare? Of course, this table it is biased a little bit towards simulation system. Both experiment and simulation, they have their own merits and demerits. Certain problems are there. You can't avoid experiments, and certain situations are there where you cannot do experiments. You can do only limited experiments. Let's say there is a plan to send a rocket to Mars. So we can do some limited experiments. So we have to rely heavily on simulations. But there are certain cases where we rely more on experiments because our simulation system is not that much smart. Like in our case, if you are interested on turbulence, Of course, turbulent models are there, but most of them are very approximate. But if you are interested in the deep insight of turbulence, it's very difficult to simulate. Maybe you have to do a lot of experiments. Okay. Now, let us try to understand what are the comparable things and what are the differences. In case of experiments, if you conduct experiment, then you can take a data one quantity at a time. But this can be overcome nowadays because we have many sensor systems. So you can put lots of sensors at different places, and you can get different variables at different locations simultaneously. But in case of simulation, the advantage is you can get all desired quantities. So though you can use many sensors or data collection system, but still it is at a limited number of points. Whereas in case of simulation, it can be in high resolution. Now we conduct experiments for laboratory scale model. Then from the scaled model, we go to the prototype. Whereas when we simulate, it can be on actual flow domain. Okay. Now there is an implication. When we conduct experiments in a scaled model and go back to prototype, we lose some information or we lose some physical process. Like, let's say if you want to do experiment like flow over spillway, if it is a very large spillway, and if you want to scale it down to your lab, then your size will be very small, then your water depth will come down, and at certain places the flow behavior will not be similar to the real flow behavior. Like your water, when the depth is very small, that viscous effect on the surface, they will not behave in the same way. So you lose that physical process. Then again, experiments are for a limited range of problems and operating conditions, but this may not be exactly true. And then error sources. In case of experiments, it can be measurement errors, there can be flow disturbances by the probes, and there can be some manual errors also. But in case of simulation, it can be modeling error, it can be iteration error, it can be discretization error, it can be implementation error. So when you are doing simulation, you should be extremely careful. Okay, so let us go to the next slide. I think this slide is not so important. Now, what are the drawbacks of simulations? We are telling that we can do simulations for many fluid flow problems, but the fact is the results of a CFD simulation are never 100% reliable. And there are many reasons. Number one, the input data may involve too much guessing or imprecision. Like in our civil engineering system, when we collect data, there can be a lot of imprecision. That means we introduce too much error. Then the mathematical model of the problem at hand may be inadequate. That means for certain processes, whatever mathematical model we are using, that may not be good enough, or it is not good enough to explain the actual physical process. Then the accuracy of the results is limited by the available computing power. So this is another aspect. That means, let's say we want to solve something, let's say urban flood modeling for a big city like Chennai or Bangalore, or let's say any city in Uttarakhand, which is in a very large scale, and we need very high resolution study. Then you'll feel that though we have advanced a lot in computing system, we are very much limited. We may need a supercomputer, but we cannot afford it all the time. So what we do is we can go for coarse resolution study. That means we are sacrificing some amount of accuracy. So these are all drawbacks of simulation system. So now we have the basic idea, like what are the steps for CFD system and what kind of approaches we are taking, what are the limitations, advantages, all these things are let's say known to us. Now we want to implement it or pre-surface flow simulation. Then what are the steps? So step one, if you remember, I was talking about 5 steps. So step one, identify a physical process. That means what process you would like to model. So it can be river flow, it can be slow rising flood, dam break flood. Please remember, the natural flood is generally slow rising flood, whereas dam break, levee breaching, flash floods are different. Okay, so the same model may not work. Then we have tsunami, cyclone, sediment transport, pollutant transport. Here I have focused on civil engineering related problems. So you pick up one problem and then we have to go to the next step. In our case, for our hydraulics and water resources system, most of the time the physical process can be defined by shallow water equations. Now shallow water equations means this is depth averaged version of 3D Navier-Stokes equations. I hope all of you know the Navier-Stokes equations. We will have continuity equation and momentum equations in 3 dimensions, and there will be many terms. But when we apply it in our case, we assume that in the vertical direction, the change in variables are less or insignificant, and then we come back to, or we fall back to 2-dimensional system. So we focus on 2-dimensional depth averaged shallow water equations. Now, of course, we can go for 1D aspect also. Now, some people are using 3-dimension. Like if you use Flow 3D software, that is for 3D system. We have Delft 3D software, that is for 3D system. We have Mike 3, that is also for 3D system. Now, this 1D, 2D, and 3D, there are few things you have to remember when to use which one. It all depends how the variables are changing. If it is a flow system, if it is a simple system like flow within a river bank and there is not much meandering, you can go for 1D. Now, if you are interested for a river flow system where there can be meandering system, it can overflow, then you can go for 2D system. But let's say if you are focused on a particular area, let's say what is happening around a spillway, or what is happening around one, let's say, fluid structure where interaction is taking place, then maybe you can go for 3D modeling. Okay, so you have to decide based on your requirements. We can go for 1D, 2D, or 3D. However, 1D is losing its popularity. Earlier days, 1D was very, very popular because we had limited computing power. Now we have quite good configuration computer in all the labs. So maybe you can focus on 2D, and in future, when we will have more advanced computers and it will be available to us, we can go for 3D. Now, if you choose 1D, 2D, or 3D problem, then you have to choose what kind of variables you are looking for. Because for any engineering applications, we have certain requirements. Like in case of, let's say, tidal flow, we would like to know how the tide is varying. Let's say we want to calculate the bank stability or something, then we'll be interested how the velocity is varying. So most of the time in our case, the variables can be depth of flow and velocity in 2 directions. Once these are known, then we have to choose the equations for the model. Of course, for available model, this is already done. So we have mass conservation, momentum conservation, and energy conservation. Now, from mass conservation, we can get H. From momentum conservation, we can get U and V. From energy conservation, you can indirectly get H or velocity. But for our system, like whatever free surface flow modeling we are targeting, we use mass conservation and momentum conservation. We don't use energy conservation quite often. The reasons are two. If we look at our required variables, they are depth and velocity, which we can get by solving mass conservation and momentum conservation equations. Number two, for fluid flow system or water flow system, momentum is always conserved, whereas there can be loss in energy. And if you don't know how much energy is lost in the process, then you can't model it properly. Like in case of hydraulic jump, if you want to model hydraulic jump, you cannot use energy equation because there is a loss. Maybe you can say that no, sir, we know how much energy will be lost. V1 minus V2, I think QY something. But then that is for a simple system. Okay. But the momentum is always conserved before the jump and after the jump. This is why we use mass conservation and momentum conservation equations. So just for your information, this is shallow water equations. It is in vector form. So H, Qx, Qy, these are for continuity equation, and this column and the last column, they are for momentum equation in x and y directions. And we have bed slope and friction slope. Okay, now step 3, discretization. I don't want to explain this slide in detail because I have discussed it. So the is like same thing. When we solve this system, the computer will not understand any like a differential equation or continuous surface. So we go for discretization. I have explained this slide, so I'll go to the next slide. So step 1, 2, 3, I hope you have understood. Before I go to the space discretization, Professor Siva, should I address some questions from the audience? Because at the end it will be too many questions. Someone, can you please respond? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So do you have any specific questions till now? Or you want to discuss at the end?
At the end, sir.
At the end, okay. Thanks.
Towards the end.
Okay. So now you can see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, space discretization, we can go for 1D, 2D, and 3D modeling. So space discretization means we have to generate a grid or mesh. So in case of space discretization, let's say if it is 1D, it can be a river within the bank. So we define cross sections. So the cross section can look like this, something like this. Water can be here. Okay. So we measure this geometry with the help of points. Okay. So there can be one coordinate system. So let's say this is my reference X and Z. So we know the X and Z of all the points. So this we get from field survey, right? This data you can get from field survey. So we discretize it like this, and if the river is like there will be bend for any rivers, whether it is like if it is a real river, there can be bend. But when you solve it in 1D form, as if we are opening the ribbon and making it straight, so we'll get this kind of system, and then we'll solve the equations at each nodal point. Okay, so for 1D it is very simple. Just we have to take cross sections, and we should take more number of cross sectional survey where there is a bend or where the flow dynamics is strong. Now for 2D, we have to use different types of grid generation tool. So one can be like single block. In the block system, there is a very good relationship in IJ index, means in X side and Y side, like 1, 1, 1, 2, it's like a matrix structure. Now this block system is very useful because you know the structure of the grid. Like if there is IJ grid will be connected to I plus 1j, I minus 1j, IJ plus 1, IJ minus 1, like something like this. So it's very easy. If this is I comma j grid, we know who is here, who is here, who is here, and who is here. So this is why in many models they use block structured grid. So this is like a single block, but when there is a variation in the geometry, single block cannot define it, then we can go for multi-blocks. Means for we use different pieces to describe that particular geometry, and we get finally one block. Now there can be another type of grid that is called triangular grid or unstructured grid. So if you look at here, this I have solved. This is for Thames River and this is for Severn River. Both are in UK. So in case of triangular grid, you can define the geometry in a flexible way. That means where you need high resolution, you can use more number of grids. So like the river, I need the river geometry in more detail, so we have used finer triangles here. And away from the system, we have coarse grid. Same thing here. So in case of unstructured grid, you have the flexibility to optimize the number of grids. At the same time, you can define the geometry in a better way. Now there can be another form, we call it quadrilateral grids. That means there can be 4 vertices, okay, but they are not like a regular grid, like rectangular or square. So the advantage is sometimes this type of grid can give you larger time step compared to triangular grid. And again, you can refine it where the flow variables are changing very rapidly. So once the space is discretized, next is discretization of model equations. Okay. Now there are many numerical methods, starting with method of characteristics and finite difference method. These are the very 2 basic methods. If you are interested in numerical modeling, all of you should learn this method of characteristics and finite difference method. I think all of you have gone through this finite difference method, but many of us, we don't read this method of characteristic. But in any model, when we define these boundary conditions, we still rely on method of characteristics. And one very good book is there for method of characteristic and finite difference method or civil engineering, water flow. That book is called Computational Fluid Dynamics. Just a moment. Yeah, sometimes it's getting stuck. So computational fluid dynamics. Please note this book. I like this book very much. By Abbott and Pascu. This is a very old book. Maybe you will get it in library. Okay. And then we have finite element method, but finite element method in our case, when fluid flow problem is there, or like water flow, I think finite volume method is much better than finite element method. The reason is very simple. In case of finite volume method, the variables are conserved locally, that means in each grid or cell, whereas in case of finite element method, these are conserved globally, and this has some implication on the overall accuracy. So if you want to learn numerical methods, please focus on 1, 2, 3. Now, once all these things are there, or from here, maybe those who are simply model users, they can also follow from here. Step 3, performing the analysis phase. Okay, so whenever we use some numerical models, it must satisfy a certain number of rules and conditions, and these rules are used to avoid this generating errors from the numerical scheme. So if you go through this kind of analysis, it will help you to select the most appropriate scheme. I was talking about this aspect. Means for a typical flow situation, we need certain types of models. If it is supercritical flow, you need some special kind of model, because we need special kind of numerical scheme to capture the fast flowing flow phenomena. Okay, so that is the purpose. We have to analyze the numerical scheme for its application and accuracy. Now, certain questions on numerical discretization. What conditions are required to be imposed on a numerical scheme to obtain an acceptable approximation to the differential problem? I was telling you that when we define partial differential equations, we cannot define all the physical processes. So we approximate. So we should know what conditions should be applied so that we can get some acceptable approximation. Then what are the stability limits of a numerical scheme? There are some stability criteria. I will come to this point later on. Or let's say when you are using a model, there should be a relationship between your grid size and the time step size. If you have ever used any mathematical model, you will see that you have to generate a grid and then you have to assign time step size. If you assign large time step size, either the model will stop or you will not get accurate result because it violates the stability limits. Then what is the level of accuracy of a numerical solution? It depends on the type of problem. Like in civil engineering problems like flood, tide, we have our expectation is a little less because too many approximations are there and uncertainty is there. So our expectation is a little less. But in case of closed system where the geometry, everything is well defined, your expectation can be very high. So you have to define the level of accuracy. So for all these things, you should know consistency, stability, and convergence criteria. If you go through a numerical method course, you'll see that they'll teach you consistency, stability, and convergence criteria. But let's say if you are just model user, then you should focus on stability and convergence, this kind of criteria. So consistency means when we are approximating the numerical, the differential equations, we should approximate it in such a way that when the delta t delta x, means if you look at your differential equations, finally it will be all like del t, del h, del x, del y in this type of parameters. So when these del parameters will tend to 0, your approximate or this algebraic equation should reduce to differential equation. This is called consistent discretization. Okay, then stability. Since we are approximating, when we are discretizing from partial differential equation to algebraic equation, we are introducing some error. Okay, I hope you understand the truncation error term, but this error should remain bounded. That means this should not grow when the number of time steps tends to infinity. That means for certain cases, let's say if you are simulating, there is a difference between observed and simulated data, but this difference should not increase with time. If you use small time step size, you are getting one type of error. If you are using little bit larger time step size, you are getting more error, then there is a problem. Now, convergence means the numerical solution must tend to the exact solution. That is our target, right? Whenever we are solving one equation, we should get the solution close to the exact solution. So that is called convergence, and we have some convergence criteria. So for that, for satisfying this criteria like stability and convergence, there is a theorem, we call it equivalence theorem of Lax. So for a well-posed initial value problem and consistent discretization, that means your other aspects are fine, then stability is the necessary and sufficient condition for convergence. Now let me briefly describe what is stability. Let's say if you are using Hecra's model and if you are using, let's say, explicit scheme, then and you are using regular grids like a DEF, delta x equal to delta y, then this delta x, delta y and the velocity and time step size will form one criteria. Now, when you are solving a numerical model, that means some information is propagating from one computational cell to the other cell. So we are going from, let's say, delta t time step to next delta t, that means t plus delta t. Now during this time interval, the information should not cross more than the neighboring cell. Okay, that is the actual criteria. If your delta t size is more, then this information can cross to the neighboring cell. And sometimes this happens means when you use larger delta t, and sometimes it happens when you are using a large delta x, delta y size, and delta t also very high value. Okay, so this is why what you should do is when you are using a model, now how to satisfy this criteria? You generate a grade for certain problem, you assign a delta t, and then you simulate it and compare the results with observed data. Then in the next time step, what you can do is you reduce the delta t size. Again, you simulate it. You get the result and compare. If there is a difference in the accuracy, that means you are still, your results are not convergent. Again, you reduce the delta t. Then you'll see that slowly at some point, the difference between two successive iterations, the difference is very less. Then that means you are getting convergent solution. But sometimes what happens, even if you reduce the delta t, you are not able to control this accuracy. That means you have to work on the grid. So instead of coarse grid, you use some refined grid. That means you go for smaller size grid. If you use smaller size grid, you need smaller size delta T. So you have to play with the grid size and delta T size. In this way, you have to come to a point when even if you change the grid size or delta T, your results will not change. That means now you have got convergent solution. Okay, that data you should use. Why? For certain situations, let's say when you are in predictive mode, so we don't have any reference solution to compare. At max, what we can do is we have some past observed data and we can validate, but that can give you some calibrated model. But that cannot ensure you the same level of accuracy for future, means flow scenario. In that case, you should go for convergence test. Okay. If you are sure with your convergence test and if you are using calibrated parameters from the historical events, at least you can say that I'm not making mistake as far as numerical simulation is concerned. Okay. Now, when you want to do, let's say you have the model or you have developed a model. Now you want to use it. Then you need some initial and boundary conditions. Okay. So initial condition means, let's say if it is a river flow, we should know from the time we want to simulate to a certain time, then we should know what is the flow condition when t equal to 0. That is called initial condition. That means you should know what is the depth and velocity. Now, you can get this initial condition in two ways. We can go for cold start. That means at delta t equal to 0, you assign the boundary conditions and you simulate it for a long time, because we use unsteady model for everything nowadays. You simulate it for a long time and give some observation points, and you look at the variables like time series. You will see that after a certain time, variables are not changing. That means you have got the steady condition for t equal to 0. Now that value you should use for your unsteady simulation. So this is called cold start. And another thing is hot start. Like you were simulating for certain time, you have stopped and written the results. Now you can use those results and again you can go with respect to time. That is called hot start. Now, what type of boundary conditions are available? The boundary conditions can be discharge or velocity specified boundary or hydrograph, that can be at the inlet. Then there can be depth specified boundary. Sometimes we can use rating curve. Now, again, the boundary condition depends on flow regimes. If it is river flow or some natural flow, if it is not like first changing flow like levee breaching, flash flood or dam break flow, then most of the time the flow is subcritical. If the flow is subcritical, you need two boundary conditions, one at the upstream side, one at the downstream side. But if the flow condition is supercritical, then you need two boundary conditions only at the upstream side. Please read how this perturbation moves in a shallow water flow. Then you will understand why you need two boundary conditions for subcritical flow at upstream and downstream, and why you need both the boundary conditions at the upstream or supercritical flow. Now let's say you have got the results. This step is very much required for research scholars if you are using numerical models. When we simulate and write a journal paper, we should follow certain format. And these three steps are very much useful We are confused with verification and validation. Please remember that they are two different terms. Verification and validation are not the same term. And then we have application. So if you are simulating some flow event, and if you are preparing a note, then you should choose certain problems so that you can verify, validate, and then you can apply. So what is verification? Verification is nothing but to measure the correctness in mathematics of a model. Now, how to do that? You can choose some analytical problem which has analytical solution or something which has exact solution. You solve that type of problem and you compare. You should get exactly same results. That means this is your model is verified. This is also required for already available model, just to make sure that you are applying the model properly. Okay, once the verification stage is done, then the next process is validation. So in verification, we are verifying the mathematics. It has nothing to do with the physical process. Okay, so in the next step in validation, we are trying to understand how the model is simulating the actual physical process. What is the accuracy there? Okay, so this should be done with respect to experimental data. Okay, so all the experiments, they are conducted in closed environment and you have better control. So this is why your model should well capture the physical process. You find out the accuracy and see whether the accuracy is acceptable or not. If it is acceptable, that means you have validated your model. Now, once these are done, then you can apply the model to solve some real problem. But please remember that you should not verify, validate a model for certain flow situation and then apply it to solve some other problem. That is not acceptable. You should verify, validate a problem which is very similar, or it is for the same site or similar flow situation. Then only you can use the verified, validated model to apply for solving a real-time problem. Okay. So this step is not required. I'll skip. These three steps. Whatever I have discussed, I have explained it here. So now, after doing all these things, you have the results in your hand. Now you want to post-process. So, in fact, for pre-processing and post-processing, if you look at models like HEC-RAS, MIC, Telemac, Basement, whatever models you say, or CCH, 1D, 2D, outside the model, there are two things, pre-processing and post-processing. Quite often, you can do the pre-processing in the available model itself, but your digital elevation model or some input requires some pre-processing. And that can be done in GIS software. So nowadays, nowadays freely available GIS software is there. I like QGIS. QGIS is free, and this is quite good. Okay, so you can use it for pre and post processing. Then mesh generation. If you are using HEC-RAS, then you don't need very sophisticated mesh generation tool. The HEC-RAS model itself has mesh generation tool, like regular grid, then polygon, all these things are there. Even in MIC also it is there. But for Telemac, let's say, I don't know how many of you know about this model. This is an excellent model, but it does not have very good interface. So you should know some basic things, then only you can use this model. But for this model, you have to generate grid or mesh outside. So you have to take help from some mesh generation tool. Now, once the pre-processing part is done, you apply your model, get the results, and go for visualization. For our problems like flood, tsunami, or cyclone, we would prefer the results on a map. Again, we should go for GIS system, so we can simulate it, post-process it very nicely. We can visualize it. Sometimes you have to make your results very simple so that policymakers who may not be very much technical, they should understand. Okay, like here I have something. This is from one USS site. So this is for a levee breaching flow, and there is one urban area, and suddenly the levee is breaching and flows, means it is flooding the urban area. And this result we prepared in GIS software. So if you look at here, look how nicely we can visualize the results. So I don't have the GIS here. You can zoom in and go there, and you can see how it is, means inundating. Okay, so this is the visualization tool. If you need some more information, you can contact me. Okay, I'll give you the details later. So this is all about my first presentation. Now we'll go for a discussion. If the time permits, this first one, I have some other application. I'll show it to you.
Okay. Thank you, Professor, for the presentation. I think all of you can switch on your audio or even video also. And if you have any queries, you can directly interact with Professor Khoury. Other option is you can put it in chat also.
Yeah. Yes, some questions are already there. So by using which, let me update these three questions. Which software we can develop multiple grid in 2D flow? So I don't know what multiple grid you are talking about. Just a moment. Let me share one window here. So,
Mr. Ashutosh Rath, are you here? You unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
You can just get the clarification. What do you mean by multiple grid?
Yeah.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in a 2D flow, you want to generate some grids. So how can you do that one, sir?
Okay. Now,
suppose in case of meandering is occurring in a particular river, want to make the grid generation, then what to do, sir? How can we proceed, sir?
Okay. Now, there are a few things. Means if you are using some available software like HECRAS is there, right? Mike, I think most of the Indians are using HECRAS and Mike. So they have their own mesh generation tool. So let's say if we have a river like this, which can be like this. Okay. So if the river is meandering, too much change means width changing is there. Please don't go for DEM. Don't go for DEM. Means regular grid. So in HECRAS, we use generally DEM, but HECRAS can solve on triangular polygonal grid. So you have to go for unstructured grid. In Mike, it is very much available. You go for triangular grid. So it has grid generation tool. You can generate it like this. So it's a mesh generation algorithm. Inside it is there. You have to give the boundary. You have to give if any structure is there, that shape is there. Okay. Then it will generate the grid in the first hand. Then in the next hand, you can refine at certain location. Okay. So there are this thing. But let's say if you are developing model, and if you are looking for a mesh generation tool, Then there is something I'll suggest you. One is Blue Canoe. This is a very good mesh generation tool. You can use it, Blue Canoe, and for quadrilateral or other grid, you can use Auto Mesh 2D. And these are all freely available. Okay.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir. Thank you, sir. Sir.
Okay.
Vidya Priya, Dr. Vidya Priya, are you here?
First of all, shallow equation 3D. Please remember this, when we call it shallow water equation, it is in 2D form. If you want to apply 3D, that means we are solving Navier-Stokes equations. So 3D model should be used for localized flow. That means you need very details of the flow structure for a limited area, because 3D means your grids will be in 3 directions, X, Y, Z. Okay, one layer, on top of that another layer, so many layers will be there. So this is why 3D, like let's say you have a spillway and how the flow is going over the flow, or what is happening at the downstream. For that type of flow situation, you can use 3D. Or let's say you have a levee structure and you want to get the feeling of the flow structure, then you can use 3D model. Otherwise,
sir, actually,
yes.
sir, I've read your paper, Urban Sprawl Modeling for Chennai City. I completed my PhD dissertation at Ananias only, sir. Even I am, my specialization is also flooding only. So,
Okay.
how like urban sprawl? How did you carry over, sir?
Urban
Sprawl for Chennai
Oh,
City.
urban sprawl. I hope you'll be attending the other talk in the afternoon.
Oh,
I
okay,
have
sir.
that part there
Oh, okay, fine, sir.
because that is not here. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. Any other question?
A doubt is clear.
Any other queries, please?
So,
Okay, sir.
Professor Prasad, if you allow me, because we have still time till 12:15, I want to present one more thing that I'll go
Excuse me, sir.
quick. Yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, I
Please,
have one
please
query.
introduce yourself, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Pati. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
please
I am
introduce
Ashutosh.
yourself first.
Yes, sir. Sir, I am Ashutosh Pati. I am from IIT Kharagpur,
Yeah.
research scholar. Yes, sir. Sir, I need to know for supercritical flow, I mean for steep slopes,
Yeah.
is it okay to get solution using HECRAS or MIC? I think both have some discrepancy in their solution. So, for hypothetical cases, sir.
Yeah. Look, in HECRAS, I think I'm not sure because mostly I developed the model. In HECRAS and MIC, they have many simulators. You should go for shock capturing scheme or Riemann solver. You please look for this solver. If it is shock capturing scheme, that means I hope you will understand that term. Riemann solver. If this solver is there, you can use for supercritical flow. I think in MIC it is there. They are using row scheme.
Okay.
In MIC row scheme is there. That I know. But my student was telling in HECRAS also there is a shock capturing scheme. You please look for it.
Okay, sir.
Who is your guide in Kharagpur?
Sir, Professor Bhavagray Sahu.
Professor?
Bhavagray Sahu.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir.
Okay. Yeah, good afternoon.
So this is Pradeep Odlur from Chikkodi, Belgaum district of Karnataka. Sir,
Yeah.
you were mentioning like certain fluid flow phenomena can be modeled and simulated, certain cannot. Could you please suggest some books which are covering like these topics related to modeling and simulation, or material where we can explore in detail, sir?
Okay, so one book I wrote during the presentation, Computational Fluid Dynamics by Abbott and Basco. Have you
Yes, sir.
written
Yes,
down
sir.
that one? That
Yes,
is
sir.
my
I've noted down.
book. And then I'm writing here.
Thank you, sir.
Open channel flow by Hanif Chaudhary. This is a very good book, and the title I don't know exactly, means please read this book somewhere.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For Steve
It's there.
and Malala Sakira. They have one book on, most probably the title is some finite volume method or something. I don't remember it exactly. Okay, so spellings for this writers can be little bit left and right, but if you put it in Google, you'll get it. And then numerical methods. By his or hers. Okay, these are some of the books, and there are some many other books. If you want to know in more, maybe you can write me email. I can update you. Okay, if you look for all these books in Google, you can get some. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello,
Yeah.
Mr. Jagadish.
Your voice is not coming.
Voice is not there. How many cross sections are to be given for 1 kilometer for effective flood forecasting using HECRAS?
How many?
How many cross sections are to be given
Okay.
for 1 kilometer for effective flood forecasting using HECRAS?
Okay. Sir, now I'll describe this problem from two perspectives. If it is flood forecasting, I think 1 kilometer is too short length. Okay. And now the next thing is it all depends on many factors when we try to collect data, sir, because recently we are working on this Kerala. There is one spillway system, it's working properly. 3 rivers are joining, and they are very long rivers. So of course, if we have very high resolution data, let's say every 100-meter interval data, that's very good, but we cannot afford it. Okay, so best thing is, I would say, let's say if your stretch is only 1 kilometer, if money permits, and if the river is varying too much, then it should be 100 to 200 meters, fine. But if it is like not changing too much, you can increase the interval. There is no problem. And if it is a very long river, in fact 500 meter, that should be okay. I know one instance like for Ganga River, the other group was simulating. They have data 20-kilometer interval because we cannot afford. So what we do is we take that cross-section data and we go for different courses like some SRTM, I mean 2D data, and we try to mix it. Mix that data from other sources data and try to get it. Then we can get a better geometry. We use 5 for a 5-kilometer stretch. Of course, sir, 5 for 5-kilometer stretch is too coarse, but I was suggesting you another thing. Let's say if you don't have too many cross-section data, please try to use this surveyed cross-section data with some digital elevation model data. Like SRTM is open source data if you don't have any other data set. So from SRTM, you take the geometry and you punch it there. I'm sure it will increase your accuracy. So only DEMs, it depends on the width of the river. Let's say SRTM, it is in 30-meter resolution. If your river is, let's say 150 meter, 200 meter wide, then still you can capture some 4 or 5 points. But if it is a narrow river, if you look at your cross section, it will not capture the cross section properly. This problem is always there. So it's better to go for cross section and more numbers so that you can capture the grid. Sometimes what happens, let's say if you have a cross section, 2 cross section survey, and then immediately upside and upstream, downstream, you please check your DEM data. And if the cross section is varying too much, then maybe manually you can adjust a little bit. Sometimes your DEM will not capture the variation properly. Yeah, then additional formula is okay in terms of micro.
Anyway, I think your email ID is there.
Yeah.
I think Jagdish Chinnagudi can interact with more later on also, because I don't know why his audio is also not connected.
Yeah. There are many like formula or something when you have limited cross section data and to get your river bathymetry. But sir, all these are based on interpolation method. If your data is very much limited,
Yeah.
they cannot give you very good result. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Nice presentation. Once again, we are meeting in the afternoon at 2:30. So I think now we shall have a virtual lunch break, and of course, they will be having their own lunch.
Okay.
So we shall meet exactly at 3 p.m. Please, all of you, please be ready after your lunch at 3 p.m. Please.
3 p.m. or
2:30.
Sorry. 2:30 p.m. 2:30 p.m.
2:30.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.